How social media is turning China into a powerhouse for programmatic buying. Now this is thoughtful. Hello, I'm Clement Tsang in Shanghai. Industry forecasts from researchers like Magna Global and eMarketer call for double-digit growth in digital ad spending. Programmatic buying represents just 3.5% of that ad spend today, and half of that is in the US, even though understanding and tactical use of programmatic in the US is still in its infancy. But programmatic buying is rising fast in China. In fact, despite the smaller size of China's programmatic spending compared to the US, this market is driving the sophisticated use and understanding of programmatic. The skills, experience, and capabilities in China will propel this market to take leadership of this technology in the next few years. This week on Thoughtful China, our experts Jun Yuan, David Chen, Wan and Martin Zhang will help you understand how social commerce has pushed China's advertiser and agency use of programmatic buying technology, and how China compares to the US in terms of capabilities and skill set. But first, with us is Clement Huang, product leader for internet advertising and data platforms at Yahoo US. Clement, thanks for coming to the studio today.
Thank you.
Tell us, what is the difference between how the US ecosystem and the Chinese ecosystem are developing, are being used, and in terms of the player set as well?
So it's interesting to look at this angle once it being 5 years ahead and getting to actually a fast development stage in US already. And usually when we develop new solutions, we tend to do a more systematic analysis and then try to take a more industry association type of consortium collaboration method. So in the US, if you look at the key 3 components of programmatics, as we're leading the programmatic platform and learning from the past of the leader like Chen, Rocketfield, Rubicon, Programmatic. So those DSP, demand side, supply side, they're more on the buzzword. But there's also a quiet key player, the third-party independent DMP, that is able to collaborate and enjoy the audience in the full funnel pathways, not just for retargeting on the late funnel, but all the way pushing to engagement and even for the branding side. So it's good to see the collaboration well-balanced of this triangle. And in China, what I'm learning, and hopefully to learn more, is that it's still in that path, in that direction, but you need to work harder to achieve that.
So how do you feel, I mean, the way the Chinese media behaves, especially Chinese publishers, they like to control their content, they like to control their users, and they want to provide a full service solution. Whereas, you know, in the West, the technology tends to be very specialized and very focused and work hand in hand in a collaborative manner. That's a very distinct cultural difference. Do you think it's possible for Wall Street, for Western ad tech players to really enter China successfully? And vice versa, are Chinese ad tech players able to export and successfully IPO? What's your positioning on valuation and growth?
Good questions. I think if you look at the negotiation power at the end of those 2 ends, the media side, which is supply the inventory, and the budget, top from agency and brands, and where the muscle coming to a balance. At the end of the day, the well-developing stage of the market, it has to come to a win-win balance. And to achieve that, either you take much longer time, either much bloody efforts of silo protection of the connection and markups, versus should you collaborate earlier and then get to that point in a much scalar better way, that the cake is growing faster, right? So currently the media side of, certainly in China, has much different stories and muscle to tell than in the US side. So therefore in the US it's more open, transparent, and not each single media dominant that negotiation power. So the collaboration there is actually easy to understand and getting to that win-wins. But in China, if the media side recognize that the demands, the dollars from the top driving down, as the brands all the way to the mid-funnel and late funnel, they want to see horizontally and vertically a more balance of the marketing goal and see how it execute, right? So the agency is not going to continue working with over 20 providers, and each of them claim they have their own DSP and DMP. And the manpower of the agency in China versus the pressure of the dollar spending, quotas, it's just not going to scale. So we like to see how we get to the balance and hopefully get there sooner.
So you think that's where we have a difference in China, where the DMP product and this fee-paying model and the SaaS model has really yet to grow compared to the West? And is it that related to the culture and trust related to business relationships in China?
I think it's the result of the cultural trust is actually leading from somewhere else, right? The policy in one side that I'm not going to come in malls, but any rigid framework control that is not providing an open, transparent market, it limits the rigid and dynamic and the speed of transform. So if you look at just taking another industry that we can leverage from, the software industry, right? Long time back, a lot of single custom-made software solution for each of the company, each industry, their own workflow. Look at 10, 20 years back. It's dominated by Oracle, SAP, and Salesforce. As a more consistent infrastructure, software as a service model, and then of course the support has to come in, and that is the only way to scale. At the end of the day, we want to see that the brands, again, is driving all full perspective of that demand, that dollars. So the bottom side of the supply side, they have to recognize it.
Clement, thanks for coming to the studio today. Let's take a break to hear from our sponsor, and then we'll hear from Jun Yuan, Head of Acumen Media at OMG China, with his predictions for programmatic buying in China.
Sort of China 是我认为是中国最有影响力的媒体平台。它不仅上面有非常专业的资讯，而且有非常深度的高端访谈。我相信它一定会成为越来越有影响力的一个综合的一个大的媒体平台。
China started programmatic buying in early 2012 and is developing rapidly, and the usage of this form of digital media is maturing. There are around 13 billion programmatic-enabled daily impressions available for advertisers to reach, and the year-over-year growth is around 120% plus. It took China 2 years to be on the same playing field as mature markets like the US and Europe in terms of available ad formats, inventory, analytics, targeting capabilities, etc. China is actually ahead of other markets in some areas like access to audience-based pre-roll online video, inventory, and buying. The next big thing would be DMP, and most of our recent conversation with the client and their future leads in media have involved the data at various points, such as constructing a full picture of house spending compared against all media. Today's challenge is that we are looking at our data in silos and optimizing and making decisions in that silo. It limits our ability to understand things like reach and frequency, audience overlap, and retargeting across different platforms. Audience data would be the new trading currency for programmatic buying, and it has become an increasingly important strategic asset to our marketers. DMP represents the evolution, which drives the marketer's practice evolving from media-driven data decisions to data-driven media decisions. China is still at an early stage with some barriers, but also tremendous opportunities, such as areas like programmatic buying in social native advertising environment, identifying the same audience and buying across PC plus mobile devices, absence and there's no mature third-party data providers, etc. So these opportunities present an exciting future that we want to explore. Programmatic shouldn't be just one of the media channels. It would be the foundation of audience-based buying methods. We believe in that all media, including online and offline, will go programmatic eventually.
Thanks, Jun. We're in the studio today with David Chen, Managing Director of Viveki China, Lawrence Wan, Managing Director of Amnet, and Martin Zhang, Chief Editor of adexchanger and CEO of startup Adbug Tech. David and Martin, welcome to Thoughtful China, and Lawrence, it's good to see you back in our studio again today. So based on how Ad China is shifting from its ad network positioning to more of a DMP ad technology solution, how are agencies then blending or managing their branding and ROI type of campaigns and clients?
Those two elements. So one is the evolution of the ad technology company. So what used to be one large organization with many pieces is now actually building out those pieces versus kind of focusing on one big thing. So now we have the ability to take the best in class components, because the reality is not every company is great at everything. So now that they're able to break it apart and modularize it, it's actually a great benefit to all of us. So we can take those pieces. And the second question is regarding the branding and ROI. The reality is in China, for the most part, a lot of it's performance-based. I won't use the word ROI, because, for example, I'll give you an example, auto clients. They're not exactly selling a car online, per se, but it's still a performance lead generation requirement they have for us. So it's still performance, ROI, performance-based approach. So the vast majority of our budgets are still in that space, even though they're global branded clients. Like, for example, auto clients or electronic clients. They still want us to drive a performance. Around maybe so 80% in the ROI performance space, maybe at best 20% in the pure branding space. When I say pure branding, is they aren't looking at any post-click conversion acquisition. They're just looking at reach reach cost per, and basically it. Right, so that's the general mix of what's happening right now.
Do you see much difference between how a Aegis client in the US behaves in terms of programmatic and how they behave in China?
A couple of differences. I think first and foremost, the mix is different. We actually get more branding spends and branding clients in the US than we do in China. So when I said 80-20 ROI to branding, it's almost a flip, but not 80-20 flip. It's more like maybe 60-70% branding, and the rest performance. And that's one thing. So you get more branding coming through the US, which is why you see the difference in spend levels. Because with us, most forays primarily are branding clients. The second way they're spending is that they don't separate it as clearly. So for example, we go to a brand client, here, you just do performance for programmatic. And all the branding, that's the traditional buys, OTV, display, so on and so forth. And I find in the US, when I talk to my colleagues and we do the cross-coordination for global clients, I find they give one big chunk. Right, so okay, here's programmatic. Now you can use, for example, Amnet. You can use Amnet for video, pre-roll. You can use Amnet for performance. You can use Amnet for social. Right, so they actually look at one big piece versus say, okay, programmatic, they position you as performance, position as branding. And then you have to say, you can do it all. Now which part can you do? How will you fit this into that? Right, so I think that's which is why the spend levels are so much higher as well.
In the US, the adoption and the maturity is much more advanced because they understand that programmatic is more of a behavior than actually an outcome. And I think that's where the shift from Ad China, I mean, all the different ad exchanges have been talking about opening up mobile inventory on the same RTB ad exchange. I mean, have you seen any customers or any advertisers within Viviki that are doing a good job of mixing mobile and PC? What do you think, David?
Yeah, definitely mobile is the year, right? So this is the future part of the advertising, especially last year it made its milestone contributing to the US market. And US market digital spending surpassed the TV spends, achieved about 42 billion. And the mobile parts, mobile advertising contributed about 7 billion-ish. Globally, mobile advertising about 18 billion, which is 100% year-on-year growth in the past 3 years, which is amazing. But now in China, it's more of now not to talk about how we're going to do mobile, is we're going to talk about what exactly we're going to do mobile. So basically advertisers understanding shifting from the conceptual segmentations and then to the actual execution segmentations, which is very exciting. At the Viviki front, what we've been seeing for the mobile awards, especially for the travel and all the vertical clients, they're very interested about mobile advertising piece. Essentially, they wanted to combine the synergy of interaction piece on mobile with the PC is more of the branding awareness build contribution to the total holistic advertising strategy.
And where does the DMP sit in all of this? Because obviously by having to blend PC and mobile formats across one campaign, everybody needs to start talking about DMP. And in China, unfortunately, DMP isn't kind of the most critical to choose right now in the advertiser space. What's your point of view on that?
Yeah, definitely with the programmatic buying in place, and then data become one of the most hot topic, as we can see. And because programmatic is the way of leveraging data quite aggressively. And with the DMP, from my personal point of view, it solves one key problems. Right now, advertisers seems has a lot of data assets. The key challenges here is that those assets is fragmented into different formats or different channels. For example, they have a CRM, they have a campaign site, they have even they have a mobile sites. All the data is not stored and in the different formats. The result for that is less insights for advertiser they can make. So DMP essentially is a very good platform or solution to synchronize all of the data assets and in order to provide more insights to advertiser.
And so with the advanced advertisers who are really leading the DMP piece, is the entire evolution for data being led by advertisers, by agencies, or by SaaS platforms?
I think it definitely, the driver it comes from the clients, but the technology layer has to be able to support it. As the early point we discussed about ad tech company maturity and so on and so forth, that can be a challenge in China in terms of execution of the DMP. In China, we don't have a third-party data provider in place, and then essentially that's another challenge. So. From my standpoint, I would say essentially it needs both advertiser driver as well as ad tech companies.
What are some of the key challenges that advertisers are now throwing in the programmatic space to each of the agencies or generally in the public?
Well, I have a startup called adexchanger.cn, which is solve the question of advertiser is where is my ads? Because in a programmatic media buying era, advertisers so far only get the impression and click report. That's it, or audience segmentation. That's it. But where is my ads? Does the environment fit to my brand policy? That's the question the programmatic need to answer. So my startup is to solve this question. The ecosystem has to fulfill the brand safety, the sector. So brand safety is the problem so far for branding programmatic media buying.
Predictions, I think, over the next couple of years, I think the biggest play that I'm seeing a difference between us and overseas when I'm working with my other colleagues is that I find that obviously programmatic is a function of regular digital buying, media buying. And what is driving a lot of growth in China for digital media buying is video, pre-roll, OTV. I find that it's more so than in other countries around the world because our versions of YouTube are quite different because a lot of it are more like Hulu styled approach or Netflix types of program, real quality professional programming versus UGC. So it can be treated like a TV station essentially. So I find that the evolution of programmatic in video will take a very different spin in China than it is overseas, where they're talking to me about kind of tools like Nielsen OCI for ratings and ad massive budget been doing for a while. I'm not saying they're doing it very well, but I say they're doing it. And advertising agencies and trading desks are trying to find ways around it. I think related to DMP and data, also related to data is also a different play because the Chinese version of it is very different because we don't have the blue kais, the XL8s. In China, we have to go and create our own deals. And a lot of those deals I find that come from negotiations, from trading negotiations, actual fact. They're not just, okay, we can just plug and play, grab data. So to grow as well, whether for brand safety, whether for performance, or whether for OTV value, we can add it more. Our more is got to be data-driven more, right? Otherwise, they're like, why use you? I'm happy to buy directly from Youku, right, and Qiyi. So it's that data layer on top that Dave was talking about that we can add. How that works out in China will be a very different mix because of the way the China ecosystem is working. There's not a lot of available data, and we all have to use our own kind of platforms to make it work. So I think that's an opportunity and a challenge, but I find more of an opportunity because there's data pockets opening right now. It's just a matter of how you use it. More importantly, how you educate the clients. Because the next point is that now with clients, although clients I find they're not pushing it so much, I find they're asking more. And it's more like I find the trading desks and the agencies have to push it with our ad tech partners to get it to work, and we almost have to give them literally treat it like a reporting, like a DFA double-click media mind report. This is what you get. This is the value you get. Here's the insights. They say, oh, okay, I kind of see it now. Because everyone gets the concept of big data, but big data is like sex. Everyone thinks the other person is doing it. Right? No one really is. No one really understands it, right? Yeah. So it's kind of one of those weird situations. So I think that's that next big opportunity for us, all of us, is the data play.
Yeah, definitely, the data part is a challenge, so to speak. Essentially, I think China, as Lawrence just mentioned, China would explore its own way. I mentioned that earlier, there is no third-party data providers in China, like Blue Skies, those global companies do not exist. And then also, we don't see a clear path of how third-party provider can be win in this market. So at least the business model is very vague for now. Essentially, what we can explore right now, especially for the DMP standpoint, we need to help advertisers to mine their own first-party data, and then even control and help them to better control the second-party data, and then combine the first-party and second-party data together. Essentially, advertisers would have more insight across programmatic buying and ad targeting, so on and so forth.
So social media and social commerce is really the impetus of why advertisers are really more focusing on bottom of the funnel and therefore pushing agencies to look at how to use programmatic to drive down funnels, to drive sales. What's your position? Are you seeing your advertisers shift more budget into their Taobao partners and into e-commerce and away from branding? What's your point of view, Lawrence?
I would say there's budget there and that budget is increasing. From our perspective, the budget is a separate pool of budget. So the branding budget usually comes from the below line, and something's below line. And for the time being, right now, most of our clients treat the e-commerce budget as a separate thing completely. So to your question on is it transitioning, there might be something happening behind the scenes that we don't see. But for the time being, we don't see a transition or we're losing budget. But what I can see happening is that there's a kind of we're hitting a kind of a fork in the road, where we find that these e-commerce logistics players who are not so much advertising focused, are kind of, the budgets are getting to the point where it's getting quite high and the performance is getting quite high. And so we're getting clients saying, okay, we want to shift some of the budget. So I find it's the other way around. We're getting budget from the e-commerce sales side onto our side, and I think you know what I mean, versus the other way around, because normally these organizations are not suited for managing advertising and media budgets, right? They don't have the tools or technology, whereas it's the other way around we do, and we have more of a holistic view. So I find that's the interesting opportunity right now. So we're taking actually a lot of deals, or a lot of our buys are actually specifically on using the Taobao ecosystem. So a lot of our deals in China, because of the closed ecosystem in China, we can only use the Taobao ecosystem or only the Baidu ecosystem. But that is a growing component to our trading desk activity.
How about David? Within the VVK skill set, is VVK in China strong in servicing Tmall or Jingdong Yihao channels? Have you been asked by advertisers to also support this growth?
Yeah, definitely. This is e-commerce is one of the key areas for advertiser to drive the bottom of the funnel performance, and also programmatic with the programmatic in place, and then it's typical performance-driven platforms, and then to enable advertiser call for action and call for sales. We do see advertiser they're shifting budgets and then go down the path of investing more aggressively in e-commerce, so to speak, and then in China, most likely, it's the Tmall and the Taobao overall ecosystems. On the other hand, I'm observing some technology changes, and with programmatic, it provides advertiser more tools and in their toolbox, so to speak, to target user more accurately. For example, dynamic ad technology is one of the good ad targeting technology that can bring users to see different format of the ads, essentially drive more sales. And that's not specifically for e-commerce area, but even for generic branding or brand performance area that provides advertiser more of the options and for to allocate budget to the programmatic. So we see two different paths of the train.
I think going back to what Lawrence was saying, the challenge for the Taobao logistics partners is that they don't have the skill set or the capability to go into the mid-funnel to really try to engage with social, and then even bring it up further to talk about all the other awareness ATL ecosystems and formats. So I think that the challenge is for the 4As to be able to go all the way down.
Yep.
And again, for the Taobao partners to prove that they can actually do branding, they can be creative, and they can do messaging.
To that point, it's actually quite difficult because you can imagine that what's the percentage of budget that is put against e-commerce advertising comparing to all advertising? It's a rounding error, the reality is. So what's happening is, I find that what happening is the marketing directors, the CMOs, are seeing this huge trend towards obviously e-commerce. So what's happening is that they're building integration where the landing pages are actually literally the Tmall, the Jingdong pages, right? So in actual fact is they're taking all that muscle and resources on the funnel, above the funnel, mid funnel, to drive to the lower funnel, versus just having this little lower funnel component. So it's not so much the logistics. I think they do a great job of doing that component, that lower funnel component. But there's a lot more resources that can be used to drive all of it. So for kind of a synergistic, holistic good. So I think that's kind of what's happening it's not so much an agency's play as much as the client side, that where the CMOs are overseeing the e-commerce component as well. Hence, they're going to put all their weight against it now to do it, versus kind of a sales e-commerce kind of on the far end of the department to kind of manage it on their own.
I want to echo Lauren's point there is, so this is exactly all the CMOs, they look at the holistic view of the attribution modeling. So given the dollars we spend in the upper funnel, that basically is an assist concept to drive sales. And essentially, with the technology evolvement, we will be able to identify the assist contributions to the ads and then to the bottom of the funnel. So Taobao definitely is one of the good platform and gain attraction for the e-commerce business. But essentially, advertiser, they're more realistic. They see the whole picture and then still investing on the top layer of the funnel in order to drive further sales.
Martin, Lawrence, David, thanks for coming to the studio today. That wraps it up for today. Be sure to subscribe to us on Youku, Tudo, and YouTube. You can also follow us on Weibo, WeChat, and Twitter, and join our LinkedIn group. See you again.